The roar of the custom-built exhaust was Lee Min-ho's signature. It announced his arrival long before the sleek, black Bentley Continental GT slid into the driveway of his sprawling Seoul estate. He'd cut a business trip to New York short, a rare impulse fueled by a gnawing emptiness. The relentless schedule of endorsements, dramas, and fan meetings had become a gilded cage, and he desperately needed a dose of normalcy, a glimpse of his son, Ji-hoon. Normally, he wouldn't be back until late evening. Ji-hoon, all of 7 years old, would be asleep, a small, innocent face lost in the mountain of plush toys that populated his bed. He'd sneak in, plant a kiss on his forehead, and retreat, the guilt a constant companion. Tonight, though, things would be different. Tonight, he'd have dinner with his son, maybe even read him a bedtime story. He killed the engine, the silence that followed almost deafening. As he approached the massive oak front door, the usual phalanx of security guards remained conspicuously absent. Odd. He dismissed it, maybe they were on patrol around the perimeter. He punched in the security code and stepped inside. The house was eerily quiet. Too quiet. The scent of lavender, usually faint, hung heavy in the air, a testament to Mrs. Kim, their housekeeper, and her unwavering dedication to cleanliness. "Mrs. Kim," he called out, his voice echoing through the cavernous hallway. No response. He walked towards the living room, the soft glow of the late afternoon sun filtering through the panoramic windows. He expected to find Mrs. Kim polishing furniture or Ji-hoon engrossed in some cartoon. What he found instead stopped him dead in his tracks. Ji-hoon was sitting on the floor, surrounded by an array of paints, brushes, and canvases. He was meticulously applying strokes of vibrant color to a large canvas propped up against the coffee table. Mrs. Kim, her usually stern face softened by a gentle smile, was crouched beside him, offering quiet encouragement. The shock wasn't just the scene itself. It was the painting. It wasn't childish scribbles or abstract blobs of color. It was good. Remarkably good. A landscape, bathed in the ethereal light of a setting sun, captured the rolling hills surrounding Seoul with an uncanny precision and depth. It was a scene Lee Min-ho recognized instantly. It was the view from his own childhood home, a place he rarely spoke about. "Ji-hoon," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Ji-hoon looked up, his face lighting up with a radiant smile. "Appa! You're home early." He scrambled to his feet and launched himself into his father's arms. Lee Min-ho hugged him tightly, the familiar scent of his son's hair a balm to his weary soul. "What are you doing, son?" he asked, his gaze drawn back to the painting. "Mrs. Kim is teaching me to paint," Ji-hoon said, his voice brimming with excitement. "She says I have a gift." He looked at Mrs. Kim, a question forming in his eyes. She met his gaze, her expression calm and steady. "He does, Mr. Lee," she said, her voice soft but firm. "He has a remarkable talent. I noticed it weeks ago, when he was just doodling on scraps of paper. I asked if I could encourage him." Lee Min-ho felt a wave of conflicting emotions wash over him. Pride, certainly, but also guilt. He had been so consumed by his career, by the demands of his public persona, that he had completely missed this. He had been so focused on providing Ji-hoon with every material comfort that he had neglected the things that truly mattered. "But, how?" he asked, gesturing to the painting. "This is incredible. Where did you learn to paint, Mrs. Kim?" Mrs. Kim hesitated for a moment, a flicker of something akin to pain crossing her face. "A long time ago, Mr. Lee," she said. Before life took a different turn. Over the next few weeks, Lee Min-ho made a conscious effort to be more present in Ji-hoon's life. He rearranged his schedule, prioritizing time with his son. He watched, fascinated, as Mrs. Kim patiently guided Ji-hoon, nurturing his talent and fostering his love for art. He learned that Mrs. Kim had once been a promising art student herself, forced to abandon her dreams due to family obligations. She had buried her passion, her talent, for years, finding solace only in the quiet order of her work. One evening, as Ji-hoon was putting the finishing touches on a portrait of his father, Lee Min-ho sat down beside Mrs. Kim. "Thank you," he said, his voice sincere. "For seeing what I couldn't see. For giving Ji-hoon this gift." Mrs. Kim smiled. "He had it all along, Mr. Lee. I just helped him find it." He paused, then took a deep breath. "Mrs. Kim," he said, "I know this is a lot to ask, but would you consider teaching art classes? Here, in the house? I could build a studio, invite other children. You could share your talent with so many others." Mrs. Kim's eyes widened in surprise. "Mr. Lee, Please," he said. "You deserve it. And Ji-hoon, he needs you. Not just as a housekeeper, but as a mentor, as a friend." Mrs. Kim looked at Ji-hoon, who was beaming at her, his face covered in paint. A tear rolled down her cheek. I would be honored, Mr. Lee," she said, her voice choked with emotion. And so, Lee Min-ho's home transformed. It became a haven for creativity, a place where children could explore their artistic talents under the guidance of Mrs. Kim. He built a state-of-the-art art studio, filled with the best materials and equipment. He invited children from all walks of life, offering scholarships to those who couldn't afford it. He even started taking painting lessons himself, finding a surprising sense of peace and fulfillment in the act of creation. He realized that the relentless pursuit of fame and success had blinded him to the simple joys of life, to the beauty that surrounded him. The change in Lee Min-ho was palpable. He was more relaxed, more grounded, more human. The tabloids, initially skeptical, began to report on his philanthropic endeavors, on his commitment to nurturing young talent. His fans, touched by his transformation, embraced his new direction. The climax came during an art exhibition held at Lee Min-ho's estate. Ji-hoon's paintings were the centerpiece, attracting critical acclaim and sparking a bidding war among collectors. But it wasn't the money or the accolades that mattered. It was the look on Ji-hoon's face, the pride in his eyes as he stood beside his father, both of them surrounded by the fruits of their shared passion. Mrs. Kim stood quietly in the background, watching the scene unfold. Lee Min-ho caught her eye and gave her a grateful nod. She smiled, her heart filled with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Later that evening, as the guests departed, Lee Min-ho sat with Ji-hoon and Mrs. Kim in the art studio. "Thank you," he said again, his voice filled with emotion. "Both of you. You've shown me what truly matters in life." Ji-hoon hugged his father tightly. "I love you, Appa." "I love you too, son," Lee Min-ho said, his voice thick with emotion. He looked at Mrs. Kim. "And thank you, Mrs. Kim, for everything." Mrs. Kim smiled. "It was my pleasure, Mr. Lee. It truly was." As Lee Min-ho looked at his son and Mrs. Kim, he realized that he had finally found what he had been searching for all along. It wasn't fame, it wasn't fortune, it wasn't the adulation of millions. It was family, it was connection, it was the shared pursuit of something meaningful. He had arrived home early that day, expecting to find the same old routine. Instead, he had found a new beginning, a new purpose, a new appreciation for the simple joys of life. He had been shocked by what the housekeeper had done with his son, but the shock had been a catalyst, a turning point that had transformed his life forever. He understood that talent can bloom anywhere, and sometimes, the greatest gifts are hidden in the most unexpected places. And sometimes, all it takes is a little bit of encouragement to unlock them. His son, Ji-hoon, and Mrs. Kim had taught him the most valuable lesson of all, that true happiness lies not in what you achieve, but in who you become along the way. The art studio became a sanctuary, not just for Ji-hoon and Mrs. Kim, but for Lee Min-ho as well. He found himself drawn to the quiet concentration, the vibrant colors, the sheer act of creation. He was a novice, clumsy and unsure, but Mrs. Kim's patient guidance and Ji-hoon's innocent enthusiasm kept him going. He painted landscapes, portraits, abstract expressions of his inner turmoil. He even attempted a self-portrait, which Ji-hoon promptly declared looked nothing like him and proceeded to fix with a generous application of bright blue paint. The experience humbled him. He realized that the world didn't revolve around him, around his fame, around his image. There was a whole universe of beauty and creativity waiting to be discovered, and he had been too busy chasing superficial goals to notice. The media, initially fascinated by Lee Min-ho's artistic awakening, eventually moved on to other stories. The spotlight shifted, the cameras turned away. But Lee Min-ho didn't mind. He had found something more valuable than fame, something more enduring than popularity. He had found a connection with his son, a purpose beyond his career, a sense of belonging that had eluded him for so long. One day, a renowned art critic, known for his scathing reviews and uncompromising standards, visited the studio. He had heard whispers about the actor-turned-artist and the housekeeper-turned-mentor and had come expecting to find a vanity project, a celebrity indulgence. He spent hours observing Ji-hoon and the other children, studying their paintings, listening to Mrs. Kim's gentle instruction. He scrutinized Lee Min-ho's work, his brow furrowed in concentration. He didn't say a word until he was ready to leave. Then, he turned to Lee Min-ho, his expression unreadable. "I came here expecting to be disappointed," he said, his voice gruff. "I was wrong. There is genuine talent here, raw potential. Your son, he has a gift. And Mrs. Kim, she is a remarkable teacher. As for you..." He paused, then a faint smile played on his lips. "You have a long way to go, but you have heart. And that's more important than technique." The critic's words were a validation, not just for Lee Min-ho, but for everyone involved. It was a recognition that what they were doing was not just a hobby, not just a distraction, but something meaningful, something worthwhile. As Ji-hoon grew older, his talent blossomed. He won art competitions, received scholarships to prestigious art schools, and eventually became a successful artist in his own right. He never forgot Mrs. Kim, his first mentor, his guiding light. He always credited her with nurturing his talent and inspiring his passion. Lee Min-ho continued to support the art studio, expanding its reach and offering opportunities to underprivileged children. He used his platform to advocate for arts education and to promote the importance of creativity in all aspects of life. He realized that his fame could be used for something more than endorsements and red carpets. It could be used to make a difference, to inspire others, to create a better world. Years passed. Lee Min-ho's acting career continued, but it no longer defined him. He was an actor, yes, but he was also a father, an artist, a philanthropist, a mentor. He had found a balance in his life, a sense of purpose that transcended the superficiality of fame. One spring afternoon, Lee Min-ho found himself standing in the art studio, surrounded by the vibrant colors and the joyful energy of the children. Ji-hoon, now a young man, was leading a painting workshop, sharing his skills and his passion with the next generation. Mrs. Kim, her hair now silver, sat quietly in a corner, watching with a serene smile on her face. Lee Min-ho looked at them, his heart filled with gratitude. He had arrived home early that day, years ago, and had been shocked by what the housekeeper had done with his son. But that shock had been a blessing in disguise, a catalyst that had transformed his life in ways he could never have imagined. He realized that life is full of unexpected twists and turns, of hidden opportunities and unforeseen blessings. It's not about chasing fame or fortune, but about embracing the journey, about finding your purpose, about making a difference in the lives of others. As he watched Ji-hoon and Mrs. Kim, he knew that he had finally found his true home, not in the sprawling mansions or the glamorous parties, but in the simple act of creating, in the shared passion for art, in the love and connection that bound them together. He had learned that true happiness lies not in what you possess, but in who you are, and in the impact you have on the world. And he was grateful for the housekeeper, for his son, and for the unexpected journey that had led him to this moment of profound peace and fulfillment. The early arrival, the surprising scene, the blossoming talent, it had all been a part of a larger plan, a divine intervention that had guided him towards his true destiny. The initial shock had faded, replaced by a deep sense of gratitude and a profound appreciation for the simple joys of life. He was finally home. The sun streamed through the windows of the art studio, casting a warm golden glow on the scene. Lee Min-ho smiled, his heart overflowing with love and contentment. He was Lee Min-ho, the actor, but he was also so much more. He was a father, an artist, a friend, a mentor, and a testament to the transformative power of art and human connection. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that his life was exactly where it was meant to be. The end. The legacy of that unexpected homecoming rippled outwards, touching lives far beyond the walls of Lee Min-ho's estate. The art studio, christened Ji-hoon's palette in honor of his son, became a beacon of hope and inspiration for aspiring artists from all corners of South Korea. Mrs. Kim, once relegated to the shadows of domestic service, became a celebrated figure, her story a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of passion. Lee Min-ho, no longer solely defined by his celebrity, embraced his role as a patron of the arts with unwavering dedication. He established scholarships for talented students from underprivileged backgrounds, ensuring that financial constraints would never again stifle a budding artist's potential. He partnered with local schools to implement arts programs, believing that creativity was an essential component of a well-rounded education. His efforts extended beyond the borders of his own country. He traveled to remote villages in Southeast Asia, providing art supplies and training to communities struggling to preserve their cultural heritage. He organized exhibitions showcasing the work of emerging artists from around the world, giving them a platform to share their stories and connect with a global audience. One particularly memorable project involved a group of North Korean refugee children living in a shelter in Seoul. Traumatized by their experiences, they were withdrawn and unresponsive, struggling to adapt to their new lives. Lee Min-ho, inspired by his own son's transformation, decided to introduce them to the healing power of art. He arranged for Mrs. Kim and Ji-hoon to conduct art therapy sessions at the shelter. Initially, the children were hesitant, reluctant to express themselves. But Mrs. Kim's gentle encouragement and Ji-hoon's infectious enthusiasm gradually broke through their barriers. They began to paint, to draw, to sculpt, using art as a language to express their emotions and process their trauma. One young girl, named Hannah, who had witnessed unspeakable horrors during her escape from North Korea, was particularly withdrawn. She refused to speak, to interact with the other children. But one day, during a painting session, she began to create a series of haunting images depicting her experiences. Her paintings were raw and visceral, filled with pain and despair. Lee Min-ho, deeply moved by Hannah's story, spent hours talking to her, listening to her experiences, offering her comfort and support. He encouraged her to continue painting, to use her art as a means of healing and self-expression. Over time, Hannah began to open up. She started to speak, to laugh, to play with the other children. Her paintings, once filled with darkness, began to incorporate elements of hope and resilience. She discovered a talent for art that she never knew she possessed, and her confidence grew with each brushstroke. Hannah's transformation became a symbol of the power of art to heal and transform lives. Her story was featured in newspapers and magazines around the world, inspiring countless others to embrace the arts as a means of self-expression and personal growth. One evening, years later, Lee Min-ho found himself sitting in his art studio, surrounded by the paintings of Ji-hoon, Mrs. Kim, and the children whose lives he had touched. He looked at the vibrant colors, the diverse styles, the raw emotions captured on canvas, and he felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had arrived home early that day, years ago, expecting to find the same old routine. Instead, he had stumbled upon a hidden talent, a forgotten passion, a new purpose in life. He had been shocked by what the housekeeper had done with his son, but that shock had been the catalyst for a transformation that had touched countless lives. He realized that his true legacy was not his acting career, not his fame, not his fortune, but the impact he had made on the world, the lives he had touched, the hope he had inspired. He had learned that true success lies not in what you achieve, but in what you give back. As he sat there, surrounded by the fruits of his labor, he felt a deep sense of peace and contentment. He was Lee Min-ho, the actor, but he was also so much more. He was a father, an artist, a philanthropist, a mentor, and a testament to the transformative power of art and human connection. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, savoring the moment. He was home. Truly home. Not just in the physical sense, but in the deepest, most profound sense of the word. He had found his purpose, his passion, his place in the world. And he was grateful for every twist and turn in the road that had led him to this moment. The sound of laughter drifted in from the garden, where Ji-hoon and Mrs. Kim were playing with a group of children. Lee Min-ho smiled and opened his eyes. He stood up and walked towards the door, eager to join them. As he stepped out into the sunshine, he felt a surge of energy and excitement. He knew that his journey was far from over. There were still countless lives to touch, countless stories to tell, countless canvases to fill. And he was ready to embrace the challenge with open arms and a grateful heart. He joined the laughter in the garden, his heart overflowing with love and joy. He was Lee Min-ho, and he was finally living the life he was meant to live. A life filled with purpose, passion, and the unwavering belief in the power of art to change the world. The end. The years that followed were a tapestry woven with threads of joy, sorrow, and unwavering dedication. Ji-hoon blossomed into a renowned artist, his work celebrated for its raw emotion and profound insights into the human condition. He never forgot the lessons he learned from Mrs. Kim, the woman who had first ignited his passion for art, and he continued to mentor young aspiring artists, passing on her wisdom and guidance. Mrs. Kim, though her body aged, her spirit remained vibrant and her eyes sparkled with the same mischievous twinkle. She became a local legend, a beloved figure who inspired generations of artists and dreamers. She continued to teach at Ji-hoon's palette, her gentle hand guiding countless children towards their creative potential. Lee Min-ho continued to use his platform to advocate for the arts, tirelessly promoting the importance of creativity in education and community development. He traveled the world, visiting art schools and community centers, sharing his story and inspiring others to embrace the transformative power of art. He also faced challenges. There were critics who dismissed his artistic endeavors as a mere celebrity hobby, who questioned his sincerity and doubted his talent. There were moments of self-doubt, when he questioned whether he was truly making a difference. But he persevered, driven by his unwavering belief in the importance of his mission and the support of his family and friends. One particularly difficult period came when Ji-hoon was offered a prestigious fellowship at a renowned art school in Paris. Lee Min-ho was overjoyed for his son, but he also felt a pang of sadness at the thought of him leaving home. He worried about the challenges Ji-hoon would face, the temptations of fame and fortune, the loneliness of being far from home. He confided his fears to Mrs. Kim, who listened patiently and then offered him her wise counsel. Ji-hoon is a strong and talented young man, she said. He will face challenges, yes, but he will also grow and learn. You must trust him to follow his own path, even if it leads him far from home. Lee Min-ho took her words to heart. He realized that he couldn't protect Ji-hoon from the world, but he could support him and encourage him to pursue his dreams. He gave Ji-hoon his blessing and promised to visit him in Paris as often as possible. Ji-hoon thrived in Paris. He excelled in his studies, his talent blossomed, and he quickly gained recognition as one of the most promising young artists of his generation. But he never forgot his roots. He remained close to his father and Mrs. Kim, returning home whenever he could to share his experiences and offer his support. One day, Lee Min-ho received a call from a prestigious art gallery in New York City. They were interested in showcasing Ji-hoon's work in a solo exhibition. Lee Min-ho was thrilled for his son, but he also felt a sense of apprehension. He knew that this exhibition could be a turning point in Ji-hoon's career, catapulting him to international stardom. He worried about the pressure and scrutiny that would come with such success. He shared his concerns with Ji-hoon, who listened thoughtfully and then smiled. "Dad," he said, "I'm not afraid. I'm ready for this. I know who I am and what I stand for. I will never forget the lessons you and Mrs. Kim have taught me. I will use my art to make a difference in the world, to inspire others, to bring beauty and hope to those who need it most." Lee Min-ho was deeply moved by his son's words. He realized that Ji-hoon had grown into a confident and compassionate young man, ready to face the challenges of the world with grace and determination. The exhibition in New York City was a resounding success. Ji-hoon's work was praised by critics and collectors alike, and he quickly became one of the most sought-after artists in the world. But despite his newfound fame and fortune, he remained grounded and humble, always remembering the lessons he had learned from his father and Mrs. Kim. He continued to support Ji-hoon's palette, donating a portion of his earnings to ensure that it could continue to provide opportunities for aspiring artists. He also established a foundation in Mrs. Kim's name, dedicated to promoting arts education in underprivileged communities. Years passed. Lee Min-ho's hair turned gray, his face lined with the marks of time and experience. But his eyes still sparkled with the same passion and his heart remained full of love. One sunny afternoon, Lee Min-ho found himself sitting in the garden of his home, surrounded by his family and friends. Ji-hoon was there, along with his wife and children. Mrs. Kim was there, her face radiant with joy. As he looked around at the faces of those he loved, Lee Min-ho felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had arrived home early that day, years ago, and had been shocked by what the housekeeper had done with his son. But that shock had been the catalyst for a transformation that had touched countless lives. He had learned that true happiness lies not in fame or fortune, but in the love and connection we share with others, in the purpose we find in our lives, and in the impact we have on the world. He raised his glass in a toast. "To Ji-hoon," he said, "to Mrs. Kim, to all of you who have made my life so rich and meaningful. Thank you for being a part of my journey." The others raised their glasses and echoed his toast. The air was filled with laughter and joy, with love and gratitude. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the garden, Lee Min-ho closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He was at peace. He was content. He was home. He had lived a full and meaningful life, a life filled with purpose, passion, and the unwavering belief in the power of art to change the world. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that his legacy would live on, inspiring generations to come. The end. The ripples of that early homecoming continued to spread, far beyond the art studio and the foundation. Lee Min-ho found himself increasingly drawn to initiatives that fostered creativity and community, not just in the arts, but in all fields. He began investing in startups founded by young people with innovative ideas, mentoring them and providing them with the resources they needed to succeed. He became a champion of education reform, advocating for a more holistic approach that emphasized critical thinking, problem-solving, and collaboration. He even ventured into politics, albeit reluctantly. He was approached by several political parties who saw him as a charismatic and popular figure who could bring positive change to the country. Initially, he resisted the idea, wary of the compromises and corruption that often plagued the political arena. But after much soul-searching and encouragement from Ji-hoon and Mrs. Kim, he decided to run for office, driven by a desire to create a better future for his son and for all the young people of South Korea. His campaign was unlike any other. He refused to engage in negative campaigning, focusing instead on his vision for a more just and equitable society. He spoke passionately about the importance of education, healthcare, and environmental protection. He promised to fight corruption and to create a government that was transparent and accountable to the people. His message resonated with voters, particularly young people who were disillusioned with the status quo. He won the election by a landslide, becoming the youngest president in South Korea's history. As president, he faced numerous challenges. The country was grappling with economic inequality, political polarization, and environmental degradation. He faced opposition from entrenched interests who were resistant to change. But he remained steadfast in his commitment to his vision, working tirelessly to implement his policies and to build a consensus among different factions. He introduced bold new initiatives to address the country's challenges. He reformed the education system, making it more student-centered and focused on developing critical thinking skills. He expanded access to healthcare, ensuring that all citizens had access to quality medical care. He implemented strict environmental regulations, protecting the country's natural resources and promoting sustainable development. He also prioritized international cooperation, working with other countries to address global challenges such as climate change, poverty, and terrorism. He became a respected leader on the world stage, known for his integrity, his vision, and his commitment to peace and justice. Despite his success, he never forgot his roots. He continued to visit Ji-hoon's palette, offering encouragement and support to the young artists who were following in his son's footsteps. He remained close to Mrs. Kim, seeking her wise counsel on matters of both personal and political importance. One day, while visiting a remote village in the countryside, he met a young girl who reminded him of himself when he was a child. She was bright and curious, but she lacked the opportunities to pursue her dreams. He was deeply moved by her story, and he vowed to do everything in his power to help her. He established a scholarship fund in her name, providing her with the resources she needed to attend the best schools and to pursue her passions. He also mentored her, offering her guidance and support as she navigated the challenges of life. Years later, that young girl graduated from university with honors and went on to become a successful entrepreneur. She credited Lee Min-ho with giving her the opportunity to achieve her dreams, and she dedicated her life to helping others. As his time in office drew to a close, Lee Min-ho reflected on his accomplishments. He had achieved many things during his presidency, but he was most proud of the impact he had had on the lives of ordinary people. He had helped to create a more just and equitable society, a society where everyone had the opportunity to reach their full potential. He decided not to run for a second term, believing that it was time for a new generation of leaders to take the helm. He retired from politics and returned to his home, where he spent his time painting, writing, and spending time with his family and friends. He continued. The transformation of the estate happened quietly, without fanfare. Min-ho converted the guest house into a full art studio not just for Ji-hoon, but for neighborhood children as well. Mrs. Kim, once unseen in the background, now wore smudges of paint proudly on her apron. She guided little hands, encouraged big imaginations, and rediscovered her own dream in the process. Ji-hoon's paintings won local awards. But more importantly, his laughter echoed through the halls again. As for Min-ho, he began to slow down. He took fewer roles, choosing passion over pressure. He started painting too clumsy at first, but genuine. One of his early works, a childish self-portrait, hung proudly in the studio with a note scribbled by Ji-hoon. Appa's first painting. I helped. At the grand opening of the studio, Min-ho stood in front of a crowd of children, reporters, and old friends. With Ji-hoon at his side and Mrs. Kim just behind, he spoke plainly. I'd built mansions with fame. But a housekeeper and a paintbrush built my home. The applause was thunderous. But for Min-ho, the only sound that mattered was the quiet thank you Mrs. Kim whispered when she placed a fresh brush in his hand and said, Time for your next lesson, Mr. Lee.